everyone, and welcome to the CSPC 2022 pre-conference session. My name is Amanda Wilson, and I am the Director General of the Office of Energy Research and Development at Natural Resources Canada. Before we get started today, I would like to recognize that I am presenting from Ottawa, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. Importantly, in the programs that we work on in Natural Resources Canada, we're trying to better honor the land and Indigenous peoples in the way that we fund projects and in the opportunities that we try to enable around them. If anyone is interested in learning more about what we're doing in program design and implementation in an effort to take honor from acknowledgement to action, please don't hesitate to reach out. So welcome to our session today, which is on mission-oriented research, development, and demonstration, or RD&D, as I'll probably refer to it during the course of the session. And specifically, we're looking at the role of different tools in translating theory into practice in our regulated energy systems. I'll start off the panel by introducing the work that we're doing at the Office of Energy and Research. The Office of Energy Research and Development, or OERD, on this energy system shift. And then I'll pass the microphone to our esteemed panelists for their perspectives. Questions will be answered after all panelists have spoken. So that's audience questions will be answered after all panelists have spoken. So please don't hesitate to enter your questions at any time during the event, and you can do so in the chat function of the Zoom link here. And we will address them during the question and answer period at the end. So we have shared a model, and I think there's a slide that's going to be put on the screen that we use to enable innovation systems analysis in the Office of Energy Research and Development. And I think it's just coming up on the screen now. And this helps us enable mission-oriented innovation and to accelerate systems transformation to net zero. So for those unfamiliar with the term, mission-oriented innovation is a way of framing work and action in a particular area. And it's the framing that we use in OERD to approach the challenge of energy systems transformation. So this framing incorporates a multi-sector approach to a common goal of systems change, and it involves multiple solutions and perspectives across the sector. This illustration helps to describe what we mean by that. So within that, you can see that we analyze innovation from three different dimensions. So there's solutions, there's adoption, and there's their surrounding ecosystem. In OERD, we're investing in projects across all three dimensions of innovation because following more than 45 years of operation, I have not been there the whole time, we've learned that technology is just one piece of the puzzle, and that each domain of innovation is required for our energy transition. So I'm going to start by talking about solutions innovation. So this includes technologies and systems, and it is what is really in our comfort zone. So this is where you'll hear about familiar tools like technology readiness levels, or TRLs. They get applied here. And much of that work is led by solutions providers, by technology developers, or by researchers. The second domain looking at innovation is looking at innovation in adoption. And it's the one where we have decades of experience, but where only more recently we're getting more explicit and targeted about it. And that's because we don't have time to wait for the typical pace of market adoption to bring new solutions to scale. So more explicitly, targeting barriers to adoption and barriers to bringing solutions to scale means understanding when the problem is one, for example, of purely financing, where things like subsidies or tax credits might be enough to help us solutions scale more quickly, or when the challenge of bringing solutions to scale is a bit more thorny. So if the challenges have to do with business models or organizational change, for example, that would need to happen within an industry before we can effectively deliver new solutions at scale. Then the interventions there get a little bit complicated and a little bit riskier. So we employ more targeted measures through our adopter-driven programming and innovation capacity building projects in this case. The third domain of ecosystem innovation is a relatively new area for us, which we're developing to help address other non-technical barriers of accelerating the scaled adoption of solutions in time for 2050. So these projects target challenges such as regulatory complexities or other financing barriers when the existing tools weren't built to accommodate the solutions that we're trying to scale now. So we apply this model in our Innovation Systems Analysis tool, or ISAT, as we call it, which provides a systematic theory-based approach to assessing the status and barriers to socio-technical changes associated with our energy transformation in order to inform our decisions about what sorts of program elements can best address the problems that we're facing. So as you can imagine, these domains can't be treated in silos, but they need to be thought of together. So this model helps us investigate the intersection of solutions, so of technologies or systems, the adoption of solutions, and the overarching ecosystem. So that includes things like the policy framework, the rules, the regulations that govern a particular area. In other words, we don't select projects on technical merits alone. Proposals that we see have to illustrate their understanding of the problem on at least one of the other innovation dimensions and identify how the proposed project addresses some of the issues faced in order for us to consider it. So to take us down from 30,000 feet to ground level, we'll use this panel to explore how we're applying this model to our work in the electricity sector. So today, we have three panelists to discuss perspectives that bring insight into our innovation system framing of solutions adoptions and the respective ecosystems required for systems change. I think we could take the slide off the screen now. Thank you. So first, we're joined by Bronwyn Lazowski, who brings the federal government perspective as Senior Policy Advisor and lead of the Innovation in the Electricity Regulation Initiative at NRCan. Hi, Bronwyn. Second, we're joined by Catherine Sparks, who brings the system operator perspective. So Catherine is the Director of Innovation Research and Development at the Independent Energy System Operator, or IESO. Do you say IESO? I should know that. But hi, Catherine, welcome. Third, we're joined by Jerry Yin, who brings the utility perspective. Jerry is Head of Grid Innovation at Electra. Welcome, Jerry. I'm going to pose one question to each panelist, and they're going to have 10 minutes to respond within the context of the work that they're doing. So we'll then turn to you, the audience, for your questions and close with final remarks from the speakers and myself. So I think we're ready to get going. So we're going to start with Bronwyn. Bronwyn, can you talk a little bit more about the particularities of innovating within the Canadian electricity sector and how the Innovation and Electricity Regulation Initiative that you're leading is an innovative program model? Over to you.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. Before I get started, everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So thanks, Amanda, for the warm introduction. And as you introduced, today I'm here to talk about the ecosystem part of that ISAT pie that we had discussed and referred to at the beginning of the conversation. And I'm really excited to explain how we're trying to enhance our federal programming to respond to needs where we really have no federal jurisdiction. And that area is the economic regulation of our electricity system at the provincial and territorial level. So many of you may appreciate why we're both very cautious, but also very excited to be engaging in this activity. Regulatory complexities as part of that ecosystem can be a critical piece of the puzzle for innovating to scale and deploying technologies that we have developed throughout our funding programs within OERD, but also across NRCan at large. Before we get started, I thought what I would do is provide a brief overview of our electricity system and how economic regulation plays a part of it in case folks aren't familiar on the line. So within our downstream electricity system, which is the part of the electricity system that us as consumers interact with, there are three key actors that we have here on the panel today that we will be discussing about. So the first, we have our system operators, like the IESO, which is represented by Catherine Sparks. System operators ensure the safe, reliable, and efficient operation of our electricity system. They manage the power system, they oversee our electricity markets, and they also plan for our future electricity system needs. Secondly, we have our distribution companies, like Electra, who is represented today by Jerry Yin on our panel. And distribution companies bring electricity from transmission lines to customers like yourself and myself. And they also provide the necessary services required for electricity distribution. They directly connect with customers through our utility bills that we see on a monthly basis and when we turn on our light switches. So lastly, we have economic regulators. Now, they are not on the panel today or represented on our panel today, but I will discuss this area of our ecosystem through my conversation. So what do economic regulators do? Well, in a nutshell, they protect customers and ensure just and reasonable rates through transparent and fact-based decision-making. What they do is they determine electricity rates and the rates that we pay for within our utility bills. As such, they make decisions about what projects can be brought onto our electricity grid and what customers pay for these projects through our electricity rates. Overall, when projects are brought forward, economic regulators will look at the benefit of these projects, the risks that they bring, and determine whether they can be deployed at scale by looking at their long-term benefits. Electricity systems, as some on the call might be already aware of, are regulated as well as governed at the provincial and territorial level. Therefore, these regulators operate in legislative environments within their respective jurisdiction that might differ from place to place. For example, each jurisdiction might have different levels of legislative certainty regarding the decarbonization of electricity systems, as well as the introduction of grid modernization within their space. In addition, they might also have different abilities to encourage research and development, as well as testing within their respective approval frameworks. So now that I've set the stage of what this ecosystem is, while we're looking at this ISAT pie, I'm going to dive into what is regulatory innovation and what it means for our portfolio here in the Office of Energy Research and Development. So regulatory innovation, as you can imagine, is the act of changing our regulatory system so that we can meet our energy system needs. Regulatory innovation can be enabled through multiple means. The first way is looking at it through a procedural way, and that can be through changing of frameworks for approvals, as well as allowing for new justification criteria when looking at projects. An example like this has been seen in Nova Scotia, where in 2018, the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board developed a definition for innovation within their capital expenditure justification criteria. And this enabled regulators to look at these innovation projects and to justify their benefit when looking at them. Regulatory innovation can also be enabled through the demonstration and trials of new solutions. Examples of these can be regulatory trials, the provision of customized guidance to utilities and innovators, as well as the concept of innovation sandboxes. Innovation sandboxes are really neat because they're a policy tool that create the conditions to enable a control space to test new products, like a sandbox in and of itself. It allows for the testing of new products, new services, new business models within a real-world environment under the supervision of regulators. And these are just some of the ways in which regulatory innovation can be enabled, but they are all underpinned by the influence and knowledge, as well as capacity that each industry has. Apologies for some background noise. So what does regulatory innovation bring to the table? Regulatory innovation can advance solution adoption and the solutions that we're developing here at NRCan. They can help us to align business models with our advancement in technological areas, as well as build the expertise and capacity of our sector. This can also provide new opportunities for market participants, as well as customers like ourselves. Overall, this helps us to support grid reliability, helps to develop customer choice, as well as contributing to our overall net zero goals. So now that I've spoken about regulatory innovation in a nutshell, how we can enable it, I'm now going to bring this into our work at NRCan. And as Amanda mentioned, I work on the Innovation and Electricity Regulation Initiative, which is called ERIE. And here within our portfolio at the Office of Energy Research and Development, we have been investing in grid modernization projects for over 20 years. And what have we learned throughout that time frame? Well, we've learned that it's a great way to develop technology and to get some projects built quickly. But our typical program approaches haven't necessarily addressed the regulatory complexities involved with unlocking accelerated pathways to scale. If we look at our funding, in some of our cases, we're funding projects to demonstrate technical system capabilities, like new technologies that might be implemented in customers' homes. But these projects also use business models to recruit and enable customer participation. And these types of innovations are unlikely to be approved under the current regulatory constructs that regulators have within their purview. And now we have never felt so much urgency around this because our 2050 targets are really close and we know what's required to achieve them. And that's quite a lot of work. So this led us to develop ERIE, which I mentioned is that Innovation Electricity System Initiative. And under this approach, ERIE is directly connected to our investment programs. Right now, it's not for the purpose of funding more projects, but it's for the purpose of unlocking pathways to scale so that we can innovate to deploy. ERIE is part of our clean technology and regulatory roadmap within NRCan and the Government of Canada at large. And we have a few objectives. Our first objective is to learn from jurisdictions across Canada and internationally that are in the process of reviewing and developing new market and regulatory structures to support both grid modernization and innovative smart grid technology integration. Secondly, we are identifying common regulatory challenges, possible solutions, and opportunities to advance the market deployment of smart grid technologies. And lastly, we're considering approaches for federal government program development to target systemic needs that we identify through our work. And how are we doing this? Well, a lot of our work involves stakeholder engagement, both formally and through our ongoing interaction with stakeholders. We're also doing a lot of research internally and externally. And we have several focus areas through our stakeholder engagement as well as our research. The first area we're looking at is the complexity of this provincial and territorial legislative environment across Canada. The second area we're looking at is addressing the needs and the roles of various stakeholders across our electricity system. Thirdly, we're looking at all of those innovative mechanisms for regulatory innovation and their potential application within our Canadian innovation landscape. And lastly, we're looking at the role of the federal government and how we might be able to play a part in regulatory innovation and regulatory readiness within our energy transition. So speaking of our government role, what exactly is the role of our federal government as we're moving forward? Well, I'm going to present three key areas before we move on to our other speakers. The first way NRCan can be involved is through encouraging information sharing at both local and international scales. And we've seen this directly within our programming because, as I said, we've been funding grid modernization projects for over 20 years. We're looking at how we report on and share information from our programs. And we want to make sure that the lessons learned from our projects are being brought to the awareness of regulators and that the information that is shared helps to justify the advancement of these technologies at a broader scale. The second way we are involved is through our convening power by bringing stakeholders together, including regulators, federal, provincial, territorial governments, to discuss pertinent issues, as well as to gain their perspectives. And lastly, we can use our programming and funding to develop programs to target these systemic needs that we identify through our research and engagement mechanisms. An outcome of this work is really hoping to inspire and inform our future programming. So with that, I would like to thank you for listening as I spoke about this ecosystem part of the pie. And I'm now going to pass it back to you, Amanda, so we can take a deeper look at systems change from the perspective of the system operator as well as the distribution utility. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bronwyn. That's really fantastic. We're going to move now to Catherine, as Bronwyn alluded to. So Catherine, as a system operator and based on its mandate, the IESO is uniquely positioned to enable innovation and system transformation in Ontario. Can you explain why this is the case and what you've seen in your experience at IESO? And I know that you have direct experience with it in the York Region Non-Wires Alternative project that you're leading, but you also have a province-wide perspective that you're responsible for. How much of the systems change are you trying to engage in with your various projects and initiatives?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda, and thanks to you and the team at NRCan for including the ISO in this incredible conference. So for those who might not know, the Independent Electricity System Operator is responsible for maintaining the reliability of Ontario's electricity system and ensuring Ontarians have the electricity they need when and where they need it. We also plan for the province's future electricity needs. We procure the electricity needed to meet that demand, and we administer a suite of energy efficiency programs under the Save on Energy banner to help customers manage their energy use, which also has broad system impacts. We know that electricity demand is going up in large part due to electrification and the growth in demand electrification is driving in particular areas like transportation, space heating, and industrial processes. At the same time, many of our existing generators here in Ontario are coming off contract. Pickering nuclear facility is coming to the end of its life, and there are calls on many fronts for additional clean energy resources to meet the evolving needs of customers. So a big thrust of our research and development work at the IESO is on evaluating the ability of emerging clean resources to provide the various electricity services that we procure in order to balance supply and demand and carry out that mandate of maintaining system reliability across the province. A few years ago, we worked with stakeholders and communities across the sector and beyond to develop an innovation roadmap. The roadmap was to identify the biggest challenges, opportunities, and changes facing the ISO in carrying out our mandate. And within that roadmap, we prioritized for investigation those changes, challenges, and opportunities that were likely to have the greatest impact on us in the near, mid, and long term. We prioritized elements like the growth of distributed energy resources, storage, and increasing consumer demands for clean energy, and also an increasingly active customer in the energy and electricity space. From there, we developed a 3-year work plan with specific research goals, understanding that the capability of technologies was a major part of that work, but so was understanding the legislative, regulatory, and market barriers. For example, the capability of folks across the sector and beyond to engage with these solutions. To support this work, we retooled our Grid Innovation Fund to align with our research and development needs. Through the Grid Innovation Fund, the ISO can provide matching funding to recipients to deploy and evaluate novel solutions to enable customers to better manage their energy use and to provide additional tools for reliability from a system management perspective. The Grid Innovation Fund enhances competition and improves reliability in Ontario's electricity markets by identifying barriers and evaluating practical solutions to the participation of novel technologies, business models, and solutions to meet those challenges. The Grid Innovation Fund also produces Ontario-specific data and objective results to inform decisions about policy, regulatory, and electricity market rules, and investments by individual businesses and homeowners in these solutions on a broader scale. Up until a few years ago, before the creation of the Innovation Roadmap, the Grid Innovation Fund was focused on traditional demand-side management, which was actually where the fund originated. But the production of our Innovation Roadmap and our 3-year research plan and our sector-informed prioritization of the challenges facing the ISO and the broader sector gave us license to interpret the mandate of the fund much more broadly. The evolution of the fund to focus on that broader suite of solutions also enabled us to leverage it from a partnership perspective with Metro Resources Canada's Smart Grid Infrastructure Demonstration Program to design and deploy America's first local energy market in York Region, which is looking at leveraging locally sited resources to meet both local and bulk system level electricity needs. And I just want to thank Amanda and Jen Hiscock again for having the vision to see how important local energy resources will be to decarbonization and a net zero future in Canada. I know Jerry's going to talk more about the York Region demonstration project in a few minutes. It really is an incredible example of a project that is evaluating solutions that take an ISAT approach. It's about understanding the capability of local technologies cited with customers like storage, like load shifting technologies, like battery, to provide distribution wholesale level services. It has a critical financial element in terms of assessing the ability of these resources to cost effectively defer traditional distribution and transmission infrastructure. It's also about understanding the regulatory challenges to enable local utilities to purchase these services, from local assets on a go-forward basis. And it's about building the capability of asset owners, grocery stores, homeowners, others, to leverage their assets to support local electricity needs. So it really is evaluating the challenge and possible solutions from a systems-wide perspective. Distributed energy resources are a key area of research and development for the ISO. We released a DRH potential study earlier this year that shows that those resources have significant potential to help us meet our reliability needs over the next decade and beyond. We've also embarked on a 5-year capital program to upgrade our electricity markets, the tools we use to dispatch generation, storage, and other resources, to enable aggregations of distributed energy resources, including smaller ones, less than a megawatt, to act as virtual power plants to participate in our procurement to provide electricity services in the future. We've committed to put in place a foundational model for DER participation by 2026. And we're working towards a more enduring model shortly thereafter that will unlock even more capability from these resources. But there are a number of issues that we need to figure out before we get that distributed energy resource model up and running in 2026. Operating a virtual power plant made up of dozens or hundreds of small scale resources is not the same as operating a larger power plant, which is what we have a lot of history with here in Ontario and in electricity systems around the world. With those virtual power plants, those aggregations of smaller scale resources, there are issues related to metering because the costs of the kinds of metering that we've traditionally relied on for a larger generator would swamp the business case of a group of much smaller resources. There are also issues related to how local utilities, IESO, and asset managers will share information and operate these resources in a coordinated way to make sure they're used efficiently and safely. And those are the kinds of issues, again, that we're working through in the York Region Non-Wires Alternative Demonstration Project. To address some of those other issues around the metering and visibility and forecasting, last year we launched a joint target call for proposals for DER integration projects with the Ontario Energy Board through their Innovation Sandbox, one of the kinds of sandboxes that Bronwyn mentioned earlier, and the ISO's Grid Innovation Fund. We're funding 7 projects that will evaluate solutions to the regulatory, electricity, market, technical, and operating challenges facing aggregations of smaller scale DERs. These projects will build capability and trust in these resources in the process amongst LDCs, the IESO, and asset owners that will allow us to rely on and operate those new DER participation models that we've committed to put in place in 2026. So again, these projects and our approach to research and development on distributed energy resources and innovation more broadly reflect that system perspective. That system perspective, the work to understand the electricity market, operational, regulatory, legislative, and stakeholder and community aspects of the potential solution suite that we're going to need to look to as we work towards decarbonization and supporting electrification is at the heart of what we're doing here in Ontario at the IESO in terms of carrying out our role and preparing the broader sector for the energy transition. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And sorry, I was scrambling to find my mute button. Thanks very much. Very, very interesting insights. And we're now going to pose our question for Jerry. Now, Jerry, in the non-wires alternative project with the IESO, you're beginning to challenge the traditional model of market authority being the principal authority in charge of balancing supply and demand, and of the distribution company whose primary responsibility, was to reliably get the supply to the demand or the customer. So in the York Region non-wires alternative project, you've explored this evolving role where the distribution company might act as the local market authority to help electricity systems to become more flexible and able to deliver affordable options for customers. So as a result, this project is engaging in all 3 domains of technical, market, and ecosystem barriers. What's that like for you as an organization? And specifically, is it unwieldy to manage a project like this? Do you have to convince people to support you in such an innovative project? And when you were in the initial stages of project concept, were people pushing back saying you're trying to do way too much all at once? So there were a ton of questions in there, but over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Anna, for inviting Electra to this important conference. Yes, with the York Region Non-Wires Alternative Project, we've gone above beyond the conventional utility, we call it DNO, Distribution Network Operator Business Model. We challenge the traditional utility operating paradigm, which is capital assets and investment centric, and introduce DR services-based CapEx concept. We'll demonstrate how third-party or customer-owned DRs can be acquired and deployed through the market construct approach, and effectively use as non-wires alternatives to help meet electricity system demand while also contributing to transmission level needs and coordinating across the electricity system. Before we dive into answer question, just for those who may not be familiar with the ISO the Operation Non-Wires Alternative Project, I just have a quick rundown on some of the key attributes of we call the MWA pilot. So in partnership with ISO and NRCan, thank you very much again for our wonderful sponsor of the project. We brought to life North America's first local electricity market at distribution level in 2020. We're acting as a DSO. Electra has been successfully operating the local electricity market in the last 2 years during the market operation in the York region. The York region, including the municipalities of Richmond Hill, Vaughan, and Markham, is one of fast-growing regions in Ontario. Intensive urbanization is expected to continue, and existing station infrastructure is expected to reach a system capacity limit in late 2020s. So running local electricity market in the York region and deploy the DRs as non-wires alternatives brings in strategic values of deferring both distribution and transmission systems. Electra has developed an auction platform to manage the entire life cycle of running local energy market operations, including participant acquisitions, capacity energy auctions, contracting, and DR dispatching and Maryland verification and settlement. And through highly competitive local capacity auctions, we have successfully procured contract DRs of 10 megawatts in 2020, and then 15 megawatts, including option reserve as well in 2021, respectively. Now, these DRs, as Kathy mentioned about, including behind combined heat and power, commercial industrial load curtailment, residential demand response, behind major gas generations, and also battery energy storage. And we're seeing overwhelming response from the community with customer participating, in the operations, including aggregate residential customers, supermarket operators, and manufacturers, and district energy utilities. And these participating business institutions and homes can leverage their DRs and earn revenue and help power local communities during this pilot. In 2021, last year, the pilot reaching historical milestones where we actually able to curtail average about 8 megawatts of the system peak during the hot summer weather last year and deliver over 200 megawatt hours energy to the grid. And this is the first time in Canada that the DRs secured through local energy market were able to help reduce the peak in hot summertime. So the project is groundbreaking, as no one had done that in North America, that utility plays an independent DSO role in operating a local electricity market. It's unheard of. So what is like, you said, asking what is that like for us as organization at Electra? The NWA project aligns with Electra grid modernization strategy, supports our internal strategic focus in integrating, optimizing, managing the increasing growth of DRs at grid edge. As the DR become less costly and more sophisticated and appealing to customers, they are increasingly able to play a role in managing the grid. They define the future of a grid, as DRs can help contributing to a more efficient and sustainable and flexible energy future. Net zero mandates are driving electrification. For example, demand from transportation electrification is expected to grow an average of 20% a year by 2030 in Ontario. And across Canada, we expect to have 14 million zero-emission vehicles by 2035, adding additional 35 kilowatt-hours of electricity demand nationally. In this DR potential study, the ISO estimated that DRs can contribute 25 to 80% of clean capacity requirements out to 2032. At Electra, we have about 25,000 EVs in our service territory. But in 10 years, we'll be looking at 1.7 million EVs in our service territory. Our current system peak is about 5,500 megawatts, and we connect on average about 20,000 new customers per year. We're serving over 1.1 million customers in the 17 communities around the GTA area. Our system peak would grow significantly as population grow in Ontario. which forecasts to increase by 4.2 million in the next 2 decades, based on South Canada's report. A large portion of that growth coming to Alaska territory. So with increased organic growth and proliferation of formula DRs now and in the foreseeable future, how can we as a utility manage the future load growth from DRs while still build a resilient and, more importantly, a flexible grid of the future? How can we leverage technology to help addressing real concerns of climate change and meet our own net zero emission target by 2050? The NWA pilot providing a great, excellent opportunity for us to really test our operations. Allowed Electra to develop a better understanding and gain practical experiences in competitive procuring operating DERs as cost-effective, reliable, and environmentally sustainable energy solutions through operating local electricity market. The project has mobilized the entire organization. We have tremendous support across the entire company, from top executive management to all the way to various department business units, from control units to planning, network services, regulatory, legal, customer services. We align across functional efforts in making this innovation work and bring it to reality. We have gained understanding and experience in managing some peak demand with growing energy needs with DRs, making non-wires alternatives as our planning and investment focus, and looking at how we can tap into the grid edge resource to defer and reduce or avoid traditional investment on poles and wires. So there's no hesitation to jump on the project. It's with all the support from the organizations and the support from IESO and NRCan as well. Now, from customer perspective, customers are now actively engaging with the grid. They're seeking low cost and flexible ways to participate in energy transition. Based on ENY research that globally, 86% of customers show interest in generating their own electricity at home. It becomes increasingly clear to us that the aggregated impact of individual utility customer actions on decarbonization is not only profound, but also one of the fast, cost-effective ways for utility to make progress towards our own climate change goals. So how can customers unlock the value of the DERs by accessing grid services program and access the revenue stream to help supporting the DER investment? Suited and the pilot Electra offered local community and customers engagement with more energy choices, allowing customers to supply electricity resources into the grid while bringing forward a new revenue stream. The resource from our customers were the response from our customers was overwhelming. We oversubscribed our capacity requirement more than 2-3 times during our 2-year market operation. It's further strengthened our customer relationship between utility and customers by providing an opportunity to share Electra's vision and involving them in the journey to decarbonization in a cleaner environment. One of the customers said to us during the customer feedback session that the local energy market gives the customer, the local community, the opportunity to take on an active role in participating and being part of the grid solutions for their own local utilities, while being able to generate new source of income. So it's a win-win-win for customers, community, and the grid. And what does NWA pilot means to transforming the utility business model? Distribution network operators, the DNOs, are at the heart of transition to a high DR future. Our distribution networks will need to accommodate empowered customer demands and a digital ledger grid where power and information flow bidirectionally. Industry-leading surveys showing 93% of network leadership says that DNOs will need to take on a more active role in managing DRs at local level. The call for DNOs to design and operate active distribution system comprising networks, demand generation, and other flexible DRs is leading to the utility business model transformation across the globe. The energy model, business model are being shifted as we begin to see utilities like Electra transitioning from DNO to DSO to accommodate the empowered customer demand and the highly distributed, decarbonized, and decentralized grid. Learnings from the NWA pilot will support Electra in its effort to transition to a DSO business model. Electra is also able to leverage experiences and support advocacy for the utilities community industry regarding the remuneration and incentives to harness the DRs at the grid edge. Now, beyond the pilot, now we have tested technology, the market, the customer uptake on the NWA pilot program. How can we scale? How can we optimize the NWA pilot? The NWA pilot have been proven successful and effective in helping meeting local, regional, and city needs. Now we've seen real opportunity here is the upcoming capacity constraint in the Ontario in mid-decade. The NWA can enable DRs as new energy supply resource to mitigate that. So we talk about ecosystem, regulatory environment, policy, rules, and restorations. We need the market rules. We're working with IESO and closely on the DR scenario modeling studies to define TD coordination protocols and frameworks, which are fitting into the ISO market vision and design project. And we were assessing as part of the product learning, as we're wrapping up in the way pilot, we'll identify assessing the regulatory and legal barriers to facilitate the effective operationalize the NWA pilot under the Ontario law, including what change may be desirable to facilitate the evolution from DSO to a distribution to DNO to a distribution operating model DSO. Are there any gaps or improvements in the current legislative or regulatory framework that we could identify as serve as a barrier to scale the project? Utility requires clarity and incentive to really aggressive pursuing DR's solutions. And fundamental changes to the traditional assets-based business model required to include service-based revenue and enhanced performance-based regulation that can decouple utility returns from only investment in assets. Incentivize value-added services while able to protect against risk of abandoned assets. So we were proposing legislative regulatory changes as we're wrapping up the operation pilot. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jerry. And thanks to all of our panelists. Really, really interesting insights. We're now going to turn to the question and answer portion of the program. We have probably 5 to 10 minutes for audience members to ask any questions that they might have of the panelists, whether more broadly on mission-oriented approaches to programming or anything specific that they might have mentioned. And you can indicate whether there are questions by either typing them in the chat function, or you can use the raise your hand function, and I can call on you if you want to ask them on screen. And if all else fails, you can just wave your arms wildly at me. I don't see any yet, but maybe while we're waiting to see if there might be some questions, I have one that I can throw out there, if I may. And it really relates back to the ISAT model. So, and this is open to any of the panelists who wishes to answer. So of the 3 sections of the ISAT model, so the solutions, the adoption, and the ecosystems, where have you, in your experience, wherever it is that you're working sort of in that chain, find the largest challenges, and where do you see the greatest opportunities for electricity sector transformation? So maybe I'll see if anyone wants to jump in with some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Thanks, Amanda. I think in terms of greatest challenges, I think coordinating the movement in the different domains. So, I think of the solution suite, right? And technology providers. And I think that what we've seen, over the last, call it 5-10 years, is that from a technical perspective, there's a readiness, right? and they have a sense of what they can do and what they can provide, and we can assess the technical capability of a resource pretty quickly. It's then aligning our what becomes our understanding of what that resource is technically capable of doing with lining up electricity market changes from our perspective as the electricity market operator, lining up the regulatory solutions, right, if there are regulatory barriers, lining up the readiness of of sort of broader stakeholders. I think that's been the biggest challenge. So I think, and I think Enercan's been pushing us all in this direction, but taking that approach that, when we're thinking about, about the solution suite, taking that more that systems-based approach, in assessing the options and then in working to mainstream them is so critical to that end.
Fantastic. Thanks, Catherine. Did Bronwyn or Jerry, did you want to jump in at all on this, or are you happy to leave it?
Agree with Catherine, your comments, and it's very invaluable. From utility perspective, I think the technology phase we're done, we're past. It's not a challenge anymore, right? We put resources and put troops on the ground. We tested. We're running our process. We develop software tools. It's really what I see next step is, if you're looking at the whole SA model, is the whole, ecosystem, the regulations, the regulatory environment. You can see around the world where those local energy markets are thrive is where there's conducive, in regulatory environment. For example, UK. I know Ofgem is pushing hard for their DNO become DSOs. So then looking at Ontario, what do we do to transition us from traditional network investment and operators and network maintenance mode to really becoming more proactive in managing a resource at a grid edge, balancing the demand and supply in a moment time frame. That really required change on the mindset shift of our organizations, that we are going to grow bigger. We're going to coming out of our comfort zone, but we've been playing that model for 100 years. So we will grow into a DSO role. That means we'll look at our technological investment, our capabilities, our people skill set, our process, our focus as well. And also we're looking to our regulators, OEB and our partner IESO here, helping us to along that journey. I mean, even you guys have been wonderful helping us to piloting this project or many other projects to monitor the grid. Now it's time to really look into your continuous support from regulatory perspective, from scale, the project perspective to take that to optimize our end-of-way pilot.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we do have a question here in the chat. And I think it gets a little bit at the ecosystem component of the ISAP model. So it's a question about, governments change. And so the political government in Ontario and, approaches to renewable energy projects, for example, how has that affected the work that you do at IESO? So, noting that in the past, some projects have been canceled. What do you do at the IESO to sort of make sure that your work happens regardless of political strife?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think a couple of things. I mean, I mentioned at the outset that we're responsible for planning for Ontario's electricity supply. So we do a 20-year demand outlook and a 20-year supply projection, not looking at particular resources, but what do we have in the province? What do we expect to emerge? And so that gives a frame, right, in order for solution providers, for generators, for storage, others, energy efficiency investors to plan for their investments and to plan for their participation in procurements. And we're actually at a point, because of our demand outlook, right, and the growth that we're projecting, and retirement of assets and assets coming off contract, we're procuring significant amounts of electricity for the first time in a decade here in this province. And the work that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years, again, resulting from that innovation roadmap to integrate storage into our markets. The work that we're doing with Jerry and Enercan and others to integrate distributed energy resources, all that is creating an additional pool of resources and a broader spectrum of resources, clean resources that are going to be able to participate in those procurements. So, as a system operator, we are resource agnostic in terms of the resources that participate in our procurements in our electricity markets. But we also understand that resiliency comes from having the broadest possible toolkit. And we also understand that consumers are increasingly articulating preferences for clean energy resources. And so we're working to accommodate those preferences through the types of market evolution activities that we undertake.
It was bound to happen at least one time in the session that I forgot to hit the mute button. Thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate that. We have about 9 minutes left in our session. We have one more question here. I think let's try to get to it because I just don't want to leave it on the table, and maybe just quick thoughts if anyone has them. So the question is, what are the most? Oh, hang on. We have 2 questions here since the last time I looked. So let me go to the first one first. So how the inclusion of information based on national resources diversity. Okay, so you'll see the question there from Miriam. So it's about inclusion policy and how can it be practiced based in provincial resources diversity, and how will it affect the job market, present energy projects, businesses, etc. It doesn't finish there. I'm not sure if someone might. It might be just that I'm trying to read it quickly, but if anyone has thoughts on that, please feel free to jump in. Otherwise, let's just go to the next question. What is the most promising green energy technology or technologies for decarbonization that you feel could be embraced by provinces and scaled and integrated into the grid quickly? That's sounds like a simple question, but I know that it's not. I don't know if anyone wants to offer a couple of quick thoughts on that, or if we want to move on.
So from Electra, from a utility perspective, we're seeing those what we call the grid edge technology proliferating on a daily basis. You know, typical technology used to solar, battery storage, and biomass being connected to our grid. More and more, there's hydrogen technology are coming as well. So all technology are great technology to help us modernize our grid. For utilities, you know, our mandate is to connect, making sure all those DRs are being connected to our grid in a safely reliable manner, and making sure we're managing DRs to helping supporting growth by, I shouldn't say it's expanding our capacity, but by ensuring we have capacity connecting those DRs. But also the other flip side is, you know, we need to look at how we can deploy technology as different technology that allow us to take DRs, flip it around, and have them supply energy back to the grid. So this is a very different concept altogether. EV is a typical example, right? It's two edge of the sword. So we have school buses will have a community come to us asking us, can you help us? You know, we can electrify our fleet. Can you somehow help us to take our fleet battery energies where we can, you know, charge in the night, take advantage of the lower rate, but during the day, can you take us, supply your grid? So we're seeing more and more demand from customers asking the utility to take their energy back to the grid. So this is a different technology we're looking at. It's more a digital intelligence at the grid edge. How can we quickly deploy those digital intelligence at grid edge to take those DERs at the grid edge, supply our resources? It could be AMI, the new generation AMI 2.0, that allow us to timely look at their consumption of DERs and monitoring those performance. And the technology we develop as well, the software tools that creating local energy market allow people to register in your platform, able to offer their DRs free grid services.
Great. Thanks so much, Jerry. We're going to have to move now just to our quick closing remarks because we only have 5 minutes left in this session, and I know the organizers would very much appreciate us ending on time. So, I mean, first of all, a huge thank you to the three of you for participating in this today. I think it's really clear that innovation is a vital part of determining the clean technology pathways to 2050 for net zero, but even to 2035 as we look toward a net zero grid. And I think what we've heard today is it's not just about innovating for the sake of innovating, but it's about innovating quickly at a systems level so that we can get to where we need to be by 2050 to meet net zero targets. For any of you who are listening today in the audience and trying to enable systems change, you know that taking the theory to the practice involves a lot of coordination in order to be effective. So to make that easier to digest, we have a few quick key takeaways on what successful stakeholder coordination can look like for different stakeholder groups. So to federal colleagues, we need to increase the sophistication of our innovation programs to enable accelerated pathways to scale. We need to help the proponents of our program break free of that death by demonstration spiral, recognizing that just subsidizing capital costs isn't enough of the solution. The Innovation Electricity and Regulation Initiative, or IERI, that Bronwyn talked about is really one example of how we can bring the different tech, market, and policy pieces together to enable pathways to scale. So come talk to us if you're interested in learning more about how we're applying this frame. Secondly, to innovators in the electricity sector on scaling up innovative solutions and the all too common death by pilot, adopters like utilities need to help structure the learning from pilots into other aspects of planning and operations to move past experimentation. So, be the D in R&D and keep in mind the purpose of innovation. It's not just innovation, as I said earlier. It's really about creating new business models. Solutions developers need to anticipate commercialization pathways earlier in the process, even before the pilot is developed. And you need to identify the legislative, regulatory, or business barriers, as well as potential solutions that your clients will face to determine whether you're developing the right business model. You need to build the capacity to be innovative. How you staff up and how you develop new organizational capabilities matters. You need to anticipate the needs of the utilities and recognize their business cycle. And thirdly, to our enabling institutions like regulators and agencies, many of our institutional structures were set up to maintain the status quo that is eventually no longer going to be the status quo, whether you're looking at financing, insurance, or electricity markets as the world responds to climate change. In this way, innovation applies to you as well. Studies are useful, but much of the required evolution of our institutional structures won't effectively be determined without some experimentation and learning. We hope our programming can help become more relevant to your innovation journey as well. Before I end, recognizing we have just about 1 minute, I just wanted to turn to Jerry and Catherine and see if you had any final concluding thoughts that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I think you touched on it. I think in terms of what's going to get us to our net zero goals, scale fast, right? Fail fast, scale fast. Perfect is the enemy of the good, which you're hearing a lot in conferences, and right. We don't need, we do need a longer term plan, but right now we need to know what we're going to do over the next 5 years, and we need to start acting. And then I think partner or perish is the last thing that I would say.
Oh, that's good. I like that a lot. That's awesome. So that concludes our panel. Thank you to the audience for your engagement, for your questions, and for listening. And thank you again to the panelists for insights. And thank you to the CSPC Organizing Committee for putting this together. For those wishing to stay updated on OERD developments, you can visit our website and also reach out to the IERI team in the email that's in the chat. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.